to all of you. Thank you for the introduction, since I thought I have to do that myself, the whole of it, and explain and justify why am I talking about this? Why am I talking about taxes in Germany, since I'm a Spaniard and I'm a Spanish lawyer? So I'm not, and that's the first very important topic to mention, I'm not a German tax advisor. I have studied law and economics in Spain and Germany, and have actually been working as a tax advisor for multinational enterprises in the area of transfer pricing, which is well, the kinds of prices set between companies within a group, within a multinational group, operating in different countries. So cross-border transactions, which does not affect us too much for the topics we will be handling today, because these are not the kinds of businesses I understand the participants are having. I am, as Anna mentioned, currently working as a sworn translator for German and Spanish. That's the reason why my English might not be that, it's a little bit rusty. I haven't been speaking it for the last 4 years, probably. So I'm not used to hold speeches in English anymore. Yeah, well, I work as a sole entrepreneur on some aspects, but I also established a company myself with 3 colleagues. So I have that additional experience. And my experience on tax does not only come from the private sector, where I was working for 5-6 years, but later on I became part of the German tax administration, federal tax office, dealing with topics of double taxation in Bonn, in the Bundeszentralamt für Steuern. So that's where my knowledge comes from. And but basically what I will be dealing with today is my personal experience of becoming an entrepreneur or settling up a business in Germany. What is important to ask, to take attention, to pay attention to, and that's what I will try to summarize as good as I can.
Thank you, Elena. So I would just let you know a bit about the community before you start. Who is watching us and who is attending the event today. Essentially, most of the members of Migrapreneur are new early stage startups or freelancers, or those who are still thinking if I should become an entrepreneur and I'm afraid about all these tax systems, so what should I do? And so with that being said, Elena, thank you again for this time, and we are all yours and ears.
So can I share, I can't share my presentation.
You can now.
Can you see it? Not yet.
Yes, you should be able to share. Awesome, we see it.
No? Okay, do you see the whole of it or also with the, no, this is better.
We see everything, I mean, with the presentation, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, what the tax, I would have loved to have the idea myself of this title, because I really like it, but it's yours. What the tax, I think it's really good, and I might be using it as well, again, in any other forum, if you allow me. Well, I talked about who I am, what I do. I left it in Spanish because it was too long just translating it to English. And this is what I am planning on talking about today. The brief agenda, yeah, we lawyers, we love to start with definitions before we get into a topic. So we will talk about what is a business and when do you have to start thinking about taxes. We will now then get into the first steps to take into account, the very beginnings, how to start, especially for those of you who are not a business yet or have not established one, or are considering what kind of business you are, what paperwork is needed. These very first steps, this might not be interested for many of you who have been into the loop for a while. We will then get into the nitty-gritty, so into the real into the important details about accountancy, about taxes, once your business is running. And after that, I will make a distinction between different types of businesses, those for sole proprietors and partnerships, considering aspects of direct and indirect taxation. I will very briefly mention health insurance issues, and only very brief, because technically this is not a tax, it's a social contribution, but it's very frequently connected, so it must be mentioned. And from the last 2 points refer to bigger business. So once, if you're considering getting into the next steps in the way I did a few months ago, into settling up your GmbH, OG, or whatever you are thinking of. And which taxes do you have to consider in these cases? And last but not least, I will leave here a few links which may be useful, official with 2 Fs, for many of you, and especially links from official sources, which is something I will mention during the presentation, is a very important thing to take into account when you are gathering information on this type of issues. So first, we go into it. What is a business? When do I have to think about taxes? Well, a business, this is just a definition we can find anywhere. I might have taken this one from Investopedia, but it is an organization or enterprising entity engaged in commercial, industrial, or professional activities. You might read it very quickly and not keep any of it, but there are so many elements to take into account within just one sentence. It's not the same thing to talk about an organization or an enterprising entity. And especially, and for the purposes of today, the distinction between commercial, industrial, and professional activity is really important in order to consider which can be the best legal form for your business. Of course, there can be profit or non-profit. Migrapreneurs is a best example of it, having both migrapreneurs as an UG, I think, and a gemeinnützige or a non-profit organization with bureaucracy. Correct me later if I'm wrong. The business types range from very limited liability companies to these sole proprietorships, corporations, partnerships. I will focus on these last ones, on the sole proprietorships, because that's normally the first step that we migrants consider when we start our businesses. And taxes is something, when do I have to think about taxes? Well, always. It doesn't matter what you do, even if you don't settle a business. I think that's clear to most of us. What I always like to reinforce, and this might be my past in the public sector, I hate it when I see people talking about taxes as costs. Taxes are not a cost. Taxes are a social contribution as well. Taxes are a participation in the public good. It's part of being a citizen, of belonging to a democracy, and we pay taxes because we contribute to social wealth and the public goods we benefit from. We might not be might not agree with the tax system or some political decisions derived, but I like to reinforce this aspect and avoid people talking about taxes in a way as if they were expenses. So how to start? What are the first steps to take into account what do we have to do. Depending on where you are, I didn't have the opportunity, or migrapreneurs could not give me the details about who exactly is participating and what stage you are in your business. So probably many of these things, you have them behind you already. But obviously the first step is to think about the idea. What are you going to settle? What kind of business do you want to have? Define your business plan, prospective income, and elaborate on potential cooperations, the scalability of the project. This is something you can do on your own, you can do with others. There are plenty of organizations, also officials like the Industrie- und Handelskammer, offering trainings and offering support during this process. But also, I mean, I myself started my business with the help or accompanied by an organization called Frauenalia, which is focused on Spanish-speaking entrepreneurs in Germany. There are similar things with GUFB, for example. I have very good reference, or the Initiative für selbstständige Migrantinnen when it comes to women, doing exactly the same. But I think this information, Anna will probably have much more information about it. And the typical question which new businesses have is, what kind of business should I be? Am I a freelancer, a Freiberufler? Am I a Gewerbe or a tradesperson? The list, not anyone can be a freelancer. Probably is, or normally it's those professionals offering services, but not all of them. There is a catalog considered within the income tax law. I will not talk about the paragraph in this case, but if you want to know that, I can of course provide you with the information. And there is a catalog of activities which can be considered as a freelance. But in a nutshell, you can also say whenever you start selling some physical product, you're out of this category. There are great websites, official from the Ministry of Economy, for example, helping to categorize your business. I will give them to you at the end. As for Gewerbetreibende, the tradesperson, so it's basically any other business. Yeah, there are some cases which are not that easy to define. For example, if you have a website which is financed by ads, then that's a Gewerbe. You cannot consider yourself a Freiberufler. So it's even in my case as a sworn translator, I'm also an interpreter, and with my colleagues, we used to have a platform for online courses for German legal translations, for example, and in this case, we just had to turn everything into a Gewerbe and separate both activities. So that's an important thing to take into account. There are benefits of being a Freiberufler, practical benefits, which makes things easier, is that you don't have to register in the Gewerberegister, German trade register, you don't pay the trade license, Gewerbeschein, you don't need it, the trade tax, Gewerbe, everything related to Gewerbe with something at the end refers to this tradesperson. And then I mentioned earlier the importance of relying on official sources. I've read in so many fora and websites which are quite serious but still are wrong when they write, yeah, whenever you're a Gewerbetreibender or tradesperson, you have to conduct a double entry bookkeeping. That's not right. It depends on the turnover, on profit limits, if you surpass them. We will see that later. So this is something to take into account. Do not try to get into the Freiberufler category no matter what, because you don't have to. I mean, it might be easier. It's like the Kleinunternehmer or the small business rule. People try to get in any way, and it's really not necessary, and it's not associated with so many advantages as many might think. So the very first step when it comes to paperwork is to create an Elster account. Many of you might have done that already. Others will hear the word Elster and already get some goosebumps and try to avoid anything related to it. But having an Elster account is the best thing you can do if you want to have your business, and you will get into it and you will gain confidence and you will learn easily. It's not the most interactive platform or the best layout ever, because in the end it's the public administration, but they're improving themselves since this all started. With this account, you can have access to almost every kind of tax service. You can file your tax returns, register the business, and many other things. This is the way it looks when you register online. This is, by the way, this is an Elster. For those of you who do not know the concept, an Elster is I had to Google this, magpie. You know, these birds who are very attracted to gold elements and try to get it. And I think it's a really funny thing from the tax administration that they had this idea and just this irony in the name they gave themselves. So that's some kind of sympathy for the tax administration. They're not as bad as you might think they are. They have good intentions. They try to make things as good as they can. And I've seen it from the inside, working for the Federal Central Tax Office in Bonn. The modernity in the minds of the people working there is at our height, mostly. But there are so many constraints and so many technical issues they cannot lose that easily as we would do within our businesses, that makes everything a little bit more old school and not very adapted to modern times. This would be the first steps. Once you have registered an Elster, you can register your business, and for that you need the Fragebogen zur steuerlichen Erfassung, which is the most loved form within this register, probably. And there's no other way to do it. You have to do it online, which is good, and should motivate you to get an Elster account. After having filled it, and it's not difficult. I've done it because I wanted to. I had forgotten how I had done it myself. Because when I started my business, I could do it on paper form. But a few months ago, I helped mentee of mine to do it together to see how difficult it is. And in fact, if you don't speak German very well, you might get lost. So there are alternatives. You can get a friend and help you with it, but mostly friends don't want to help you with these kinds of things. Or you, I found this getsorted.de, which is a platform which works in English and seems to be faster and easier. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at it in detail. I think it's for free, but it would be an alternative. But I would urge you to try to do it online and with the traditional way. Of course, there would always be the option of charging, of giving this to a tax advisor and saying, okay, you take care of all of it. But it's a shame. It's really, I'm getting distracted by reading the comments, so I'm put it to the side. For these first steps, it's a pity that you're paying a tax advisor. If you're going to have one anyway afterwards, then okay, then it's not an additional work. But what I'm trying to tell you with these presentations and the different alternatives I'm suggesting is that you don't really need a tax advisor for a sole entrepreneurship. Once you get into further legal forms like a GmbH, there you have to have one. But even if you settle down a partnership like I have done, I keep doing things myself for my team. It costs time, so it's always a consideration if you want to spend the money instead of investing your time. Of course, I will need less time than someone who doesn't even know the concepts in German, but it's worth trying, at least at the beginning, the first year, and for the first year. We will talk about that later, what that is. And if you still get crazy and depressed once you have tried it, then leave it to a tax advisor. But I would like to motivate you to try. Anyway, once you have filled out this form, you will have a tax number. You already, not to get confused with the Identifikationsnummer. This is a number which is like your digital print. You got it once you got here your Anmeldung and you registered in Germany. You got this writing. You get it when you have a kid. That's the first letter your children receive via in the postal way is their Steueridentifikationsnummer. That one remains with you for your whole life, but the tax number, there are differences if you're doing your I don't know, your tax declaration with your husband, and then this additional activity as for your business, then you get a different tax number. You will also get a VAT number if you have applied for one, which you don't have to. You don't always need a VAT number. We will see that later. And of course, an entry in the trade register if you are a Gewerbe. So we have the first steps behind us. So now we go into this. I love this nitty-gritty concept. I don't know why I always use it. And first of all, and one of the main takeaways I want you to have from today's presentation is that accounting and bookkeeping, even if it's exactly as boring as taxes, it's not the same. So we usually talk about accounting, bookkeeping, taxes as if it was the same. First, you do your accounting and bookkeeping, and once you have your profit, your results, there are some tax fiscal considerations to take into account so that you have your tax declaration at the end. That doesn't mean that your tax advisor cannot do your accounting. Of course they can, not all of them do, but it's a different thing. And this refers also to software and all those 1,000 apps which we can find in the market right now. So first, accountancy apps like LexOffice. That's one an example. Like there's also a Zdesk, Debitor. You may already know them. If not, I can provide you with a list, or just Google for accountancy software Deutschland. But for example, LexOffice helps you with your accountancy and also with VAT reporting. Is not a tax app. After you have your results, your profits, your whole accountancy made for the whole year, you additionally need to enter all the data in Elster, and I do it myself via Elster, but I think it's even easier if you use an alternative app such as Viso or Smart Steuer. There are some tax apps which are only applicable for people working as employees. Not all tax applications are appropriate for your activity as a freelancer or as a Gewerbe. That's something important to keep in mind. Before, I didn't know it myself. I also thought at the beginning with LexOffice I can do everything, and then I found out, okay, no, now I have to transfer all the data at the end of the year into this into Viso or Elster or whatever you're using. Additionally to this, there are also banks. This is has nothing to do with an tax app or accountancy software, which are banks with supporting features for your accountancy, such as Contist, Holvi, and Konto. I have only tested Contist. Yeah, and that's the only one I could talk about. But yeah, that's an option. And coming back to the double entry bookkeeping, as I said, as a Freiberufler, as a freelance, you do not use double entry bookkeeping. And it's important not to mix this up with this regulation for small businesses, Kleinunternehmer, because that refers to VAT. And we will see that later when we talk about VAT and indirect taxation. By the way, when we talk about indirect taxation, it's about VAT, which in case you don't know this classification. As for what I said earlier, reliable sources, a Gewerbe, a tradesperson, is only obliged to conduct double entry bookkeeping if they exceed 60,000 euro in profit or 600,000 in revenue, which is, well, that talks about a middle business at least. There's even in these cases, there is a possibility in the German tax code to ask for an exemption and not have to do this double entry bookkeeping, which is a bit more of a hazard. And in the end, you do need, when it comes to double entry bookkeeping, the consequence is that you need Steuerberater or an accountant helping you with that. And this is the sole proprietors and partnerships taxes. A partnership in the end is not very different from this is eine Partnerschaftsgesellschaft here in Germany. In Spain, we don't have something like that, for example. And there are additional factors to consider when it comes to its registration and the accountancy within the partners, of course, but from a tax perspective, it ends up being the same. Every part of the partnership receives its income, and it has to be declared within the EUR, Einkommensüberschussrechnung, which I will talk about right now. But for this kind of legal forms, the taxes to take into account are the trade tax, the Gewerbesteuer, and the income tax, Einkommensteuer. The trade tax is applicable from a profit about 24,000 euros per year. The percentage depends on the municipality. There is a Hebesatz, there is a different method of calculation for its percentage. It's normally, I would say, like about 7 to 10%. And well, you have to pay this tax if you're registered as a Gewerbe. This last point is important. These small businesses, Kleinunternehmer, are not automatically exempt from the trade tax, because this is this confusion. Kleinunternehmer do not necessarily have to be a freelance. You can also be a Gewerbe, being a Kleinunternehmer, and these are different categories which often get mixed up. And this doesn't happen when it comes to the Einkommensteuer, to the income tax, which is the tax declaration you do also as a normal employee without an additional business, with the additional factor that in case that you have a business or have freelance activity, you will be filling up this Einkommensüberschussrechnung, and this is what I said earlier, a lot of apps do not offer. So this you add to your Einkommensteuererklärung, to your declaration. And from there that you have all the taxes and different taxation, which might be added to those in the normal declaration with the Solidaritätssteuer and those surpluses or the Lohnsteuer. It's like it's not relevant in this context because we're not talking about employees here, but a Lohnsteuer in the end, it's only an advanced sale, is a salary tax, and it's an advanced payment to the final Einkommenssteuer in many cases from your wages. The indirect taxation, as I said, the VAT. I have written here myself costs. VAT costs you nothing. It's not a cost, we remember, but it was in order to clarify it a little bit better. So VAT is an indirect tax in the sense that you don't carry it because it gets transported farther to the final client. And that's why if you're a business, you always have the possibility to get it refunded, unless you have chosen the special rule for Kleinunternehmer, for small businesses, which I will mention at the end of this slide. It's important when it comes to the value added tax to distinguish between Umsatzsteuer, Mehrwertsteuer, Vorsteuer. It sounds like everything's the same. Umsatzsteuer, it's the technical correct concept, and the Vorsteuer is the VAT that you already pay beforehand, which you will get refunded with those that you have been charged to. And those are the technical two concepts, Umsatzsteuer and Vorsteuer. You have to, the tax administration we talk about, the tax administration will never refer to Mehrwertsteuer, because that's a very, it's not slang, but it's informal. That's what we talk about among us, and it's not referred to official writings. So as I said, when you're charging VAT, you charge it on your invoices, you get charged for it, and then you compensate it. And I get back down to the Kleinunternehmerregel in this context, because I insist that people should not focus that much on being a Kleinunternehmer no matter what, because it also has disadvantages. For example, in case you are conducting operations within the European Union, you will need an Umsatzsteuer, you will need a VAT number because there are different rules applying within the EU as to reverse charge, and you also have to put it within your invoices. So that would be one reason why you should, even if you don't think you will surpass, I don't know, I think 22,000 euros during your first year of turnover, it might be worth it asking for the Umsatzsteuer ID number, which you do when you apply for your dieses Formular für Selbstständige oder für steuerliche Anmeldung, what we showed earlier. And normally you get it within 4 to 6 weeks. And having an Umsatzsteuernummer does not necessarily mean that you have to do your declaration on your VAT if you don't have a reason for that, but you at least have the possibility to conduct operations and have transactions within the European Union. And also a positive point about being part of the VAT system is that you don't get VAT you pay as a final expense or a final cost, because in that case you are being the final client, and you will not have the possibility to ask for a refund. And this is especially important if you are planning to have a lot of expenses on products or materials that you're buying during your first year. I mean, if you're establishing your business and you need to buy a laptop and you need to buy a new printer I'm just thinking from the perspective of the sworn translator, what all the expenses you have, and that 19% of VAT, you keep it, you eat it. It's a cost, it's an additional charge. If you're not using the Kleinunternehmerregel, you can of course get it refunded. And the same applies if you are obtaining a lot of services from third parties or other freelancers, for example. The health insurance, I included it, as I said it, not because it's part of this topic, because it's not a tax, but just wanted to have it mentioned that it's because it's mandatory, because in Germany you have this option between a public or a private insurance. And just to consider, in case anyone here is an artist, publicist, teacher, or journalist, the Künstlersozialkasse pays half of your health insurance and half of your public pension insurance. So many people try to get into this Künstlersozialkasse, like we translators, we try to argue why we should belong to it, but we're not. And now going a further step into corporations and limited liability companies. What is the tax liability of an incorporated company in Germany? This is a tax liability because I was talking about partnerships. Within partnerships, you have lawyers anyway because they have a special kind of partnerships. But in my case, for translators, we can also limit our responsibility, but not the tax liability. And this is something you can absolutely do when you are setting up a business as a GmbH, which is with limited responsibility, limited liability, or UG, because there's a separation principle, the Trennungsprinzip, and this company is a distinct entity, different from the individual behind it. And the taxes apply then differently. And I tried to do, I didn't want to get a lot into detail here, but just to provide an overview of the kinds of taxes we're talking about. When Gewerbesteuer, the trade tax, we know it in the second line, which I said varies according to the municipality and depends on the income from commercial operations. The most relevant here, to be honest, because the Umsatzsteuer, we already talked about it. It applies equally to sole entrepreneurs. And I'm thinking now, Kapitalertragssteuer, capital gains tax, that refers also to capital gains of private individuals who just have their, I don't know, investment products or ETFs, and at the end of the year, they have to tax it. But the corporate income tax is actually the tax which does not apply to any other entity or any other form of business we have talked so far. And it taxes the revenue of the company. And I tried to summarize here but it's a very, very basic overview of the corporate taxes depending on their legal form. To be honest about AG and holding company, this is so simplified, it's not worth it even looking at it, but it will, at least you get a feeling of the points to take into account when it comes to the dividends. And with a holding company, I just mentioned it has tax advantages. In order to avoid double taxation, I would not get further into it. But the GmbH and UG, which are normally the most usual legal forms that we choose when we try to set up a business, those are the taxes to take into account. In this context, it's not tax, it's not a tax aspect, but I observe, because I accompany a lot of clients to the constitution of their businesses at the notary public, and we go there, and whenever they need, I have a lot of Spanish speaking clients, obviously, and whenever they want to do it, and then notary, they realize their German level is not sufficient. They need to take an interpreter with them. And I have realized in many cases, people tend to the UG, to the Unternehmergesellschaft, because obviously it only costs €1. It's easy to establish. But I've seen many clients who 1 year later want to change into a GmbH, which requires €25,000 of capital, but at the beginning, when you establish it, you only need half of it, and they have to carry the additional cost of a new protocolization and notary costs and everything related to the constitution, which they could have saved themselves if they had initially decided to establish a GmbH. This is just an observation I have been doing. So be optimistic with your business. 12,500 or even 25,000 euros is not that much when it comes to business. And you will save yourself a bit of work afterwards when you want to grow. So this is more a self-confidence issue, but anyone has to know how to do it. Here are the links. Oops, there's a heart here. I don't know why. Probably because I wanted to say that this first one, existenzgründer.de, I think they're open. I'm showing you. These are my favorite websites when it comes to starting business. Here, this one. Existenzgründer.de, also available in English. It's great. I have used it a lot. You can ask them questions and they reply. There's checklists, an overview, publications, first steps. Well, basically what I'm telling you now, in this website, they will inform you much better, not only on taxes, but anything related to setting up a business. So this one, I can absolutely recommend it. And of course, that the source is reliable. The same applies to this website. Make it in Germany. It's not that detailed as the last one, but it still has a lot of good information. I found them later, or I came to the idea to opening these websites after I had finished the presentation, which is not very intelligent because I could have copy-pasted a lot of it, but well, now you can have a look at it. And finally, the IHKs, the Industrie- und Handelskammer, depending on where you're living, but here I took the example for Berlin, they also have a lot of information and startup classes and financial plans, anything possible. Okay, here it cost 59 euros, but those, I always see these kinds of courses not as a cost, but as an investment, because you will save so much work afterwards. So these are the official sources. I left them here. Also GTE, this is the German Trade and Investment, mostly refer to investing outside of Germany, but they also have good information on Germany. And these other three sources, I left them here, but they're not official. It's all about Berlin. I think it's good. They have it very well classified, what you have to take care of. Simple Germany and Firma.de, there's our private offers and private businesses who might have also an economic interest in doing so, but I wanted to put it here as well. And yeah, this would be it. I think I have covered everything you were expecting, and I've left here my QR code in case you want to keep hearing from me when it comes to German bureaucracy and taxes. Have a newsletter which is in German and Spanish. So I will not do it additionally in English, but if you're still interested, then I would be happy to have you among my list members. Thank you.
Elena, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thumbs up from everybody. I think it was super helpful. And now the part of having some questions from all of you will start. But before I turn off the recording, I just wanted to do three things. Number one, just to say to Elena one more time, thank you so much. And I just want you all to know, essentially, for many of us who are, working and always constantly be asked about businesses and so on, take advantage of this time, take advantage of these hours. It is for free for an expert to dedicate 1 hour for free. Is too much to ask because these are also their businesses. They're also offering these services. So I really want you all to join me in appreciation to Elena and her time for sharing her knowledge with all of us. And on top of that as well, to share what she does and also her personal contacts. And that is going to be my first and last question to you, Elena, that is going to be recorded. The rest we will do it without recording functioning. I just wanted to tell you quickly, ask you quickly, especially for those who are watching and do not scan your code or they don't understand, what are the services that you offer, and when can we, migrant entrepreneurs and migrantpreneurs, can get in touch with you?
Well, I'm trying to sorting out that myself, but mainly I offer translation, legal and sworn translations from German to Spanish and German and Spanish to German. But I belong to a big, very established network, BDU, that is there's federal translators recognized in Germany. So if in case you need translations, legal translations, in other language combinations, I can always help. English, especially if it's English German or English Spanish, that's where I have my established network. That would be one thing. Then I have interpretation services, accompanying clients, as I mentioned earlier, to legal, to notary appointments, or with legal, with any kind of legal background. And obviously I work 99% actually myself. When it comes to interpreting, it's just German, Spanish, and I wouldn't offer anything else there. What I can help with, I'm working as a lawyer according to Spanish law. Whenever I have some cases referred to Spain, some heritances, for example, then I work with that. But when it comes to Germany, I can provide the contact to a competent tax advisor for businesses. I work with a renowned tax firm, well, mainly tax lawyers or Steuerberater, which are present in all Germany, and that's where I can provide support or work as an intermediary, and independently of the language, because in this case I would just only provide the contact to them, and they can communicate in English.
Perfect. Well, that is my last question that I'm going to be recorded. The next one is going to be without recording. Thank you, everybody, the ones who joined, and thank you for watching this through NewCon. NewCon is on a platform also built by one of our micropreneurs for you to basically check this amazing content of all the experts. And one more time, you can access it and check all the different experts that we have had in the last year. Thank you, Elena, so much for your time.